Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Symposium Malhotra, and I'm a PhD student at the Energy Politics Group at ETH Zurich. And we're a group of researchers who are basically doing research on how politics and policy can play a role in changing the direction and speeding up the energy transition to achieve societal goals. And I'm a mechanical engineer by background, but today I'll be talking about something a bit less technical and a bit more broad than the other presentations we've seen today. I'll be talking about different types of learning in low carbon energy innovation policy, and I'll be looking at different technologies and looking at how lithium-ion batteries in specific are similar or different to different technologies when it comes to innovation. So many governments have used deployment policies to induce cost reductions and industry formation for clean energy technologies. So governments have realized that technological innovation is a key lever to address societal issues, and they have used several instruments to promote innovation in these technologies, but with varying effects when you look across technologies. So to understand this better, we're looking at three different technologies: wind turbines, solar photovoltaics, and lithium-ion batteries. And all of them are similar in the sense that they are very relevant to change for the transition towards a cleaner energy system. And they have seen significant deployment and cost reductions in the past. But they're also very different in the sense that wind is a complex product system, and we have seen that it really developed in its early stages in Europe, and then China, developing countries, specifically China, have caught up to some extent, but the process has been very slow. Solar photovoltaics, on the other hand, are mass-produced technologies, and we see that China has caught up very fast to the lead countries. And finally, lithium-ion is also a bit similar to solar PV in the sense that it's a mass-produced good, but still, currently, the market leaders are Japan and South Korea, and countries like China are trying to catch up, but we see that the process is slow, and this is something that is relevant for Europe today as well. So in this study, we conceptualize innovation as an iterative process, which involves knowledge feedbacks and interaction between R&D and manufacturing and use of the technologies. And the questions that we're trying to answer are innovation and feedback patterns across different technologies, are they technology specific? And if so, what does that mean for policy if you want to promote innovation in these technologies? So we have three sub-research questions. First of all, for these technologies, where in the industry value chain is innovation happening, and what kind of innovation is it, whether it's product or process innovation? Second, what role do interactive learning and feedback from the production or from the use of the technologies, what role do they play in innovation in these technologies? And finally, can we connect these patterns back to the product architecture of these technologies, and can we generalize this to other technologies as well? So the methods that we're using is we're doing patent content analysis. So we have a database of patents for all three technologies from the European Patent Office. What we do is we isolate the most relevant patents, which represent inventions with economic value by looking at the amount of forward citations that they receive. And basically, we qualitatively code them on the basis of what is the locus of innovation, basically where in the value chain they represent an invention. And second, what is the type of innovation, whether it's a product or process innovation. And second, and this is our main data source that we're using right now. We're conducting in-depth expert interviews with different actors in the industry value chains for the two technologies. And again, we're trying to triangulate what we see in the patent data and add to it by looking at what is the locus of innovation in the value chain, what type of innovation is taking place, and what kind of linkages do they have with other actors in the industry value chain which enable these kind of innovations. So very quickly, I'll describe some of the initial results that we have. This is a work in progress. So first of all, we see significant differences across all three technologies. If we look at wind, and if we look at the patent data, the key thing here is that most of the innovation that we see is product innovation. They are not significant process innovations in the manufacturing of wind turbines. And they're largely focused in the core of the technology itself. So the rotor, which converts the wind to mechanical power, and the powertrain, which transmits it to the generator. So this is really the focus of innovation in the value chain. And through our interviews, we have found that if we conceptualize the value chain and divide it into upstream, core, and downstream activities and use phase activities, then these innovations are really enabled by interactions, by feedback interactions in the downstream stages of the value chain. So what this means is that the wind turbine manufacturers work very closely and have significant knowledge exchanges with the component suppliers. So these could be the people who supply the gears or the rotor blades or the control systems for the technology. And both the manufacturers as well as the component suppliers obtain significant feedback from the installation, the construction, and the use of the technologies. So there's a lot of iteration going on in terms of evaluating the performance of these technologies, and that then feeding back into the design and research. This contrasts really well with solar PV, where we see that, first of all, there is a lot more, first, innovation is really focused on the upstream activity of material supply and the core activity of cell manufacturing. So there's already a shift in terms of innovation more upstream, and further there's a lot more emphasis on process innovation as well, because you have complex processes for manufacturing of the material and the cells themselves. And another feature that we see is this linkage between product and process innovation. So it's very specific manufacturing processes which are required. And again, in the interviews, we see that the innovations in the core and the upstream activities are enabled by more interactions in the upstream phases. So there's a lot of learning while producing the technologies, and a lot of interaction between the material suppliers and the cell manufacturers, while there's not so much learning for the cells themselves from the downstream phases. So you don't really learn much by using the technology, because it's very well, you can simulate that very well in the lab because it's not a complex technology. And finally, lithium-ion batteries are even more interesting because you have a dual complexity going on here. First of all, innovation is focused, again, very much on the cell, but we also see that this is very much linked with innovations in the material as well. So it's hard to separate because the materials are very much specific to the cells themselves, and so there is a lot of linkage between the material supplier as well as the cell manufacturer. And besides that, you also have a strong linkage between product and process innovation. Again, as we saw in solar PV, the product design as well as the manufacturing processes are also closely interlinked, which again requires close link between the cell manufacturer and the production equipment supplier. And again, we see that in the nature of interactions between the different stakeholders as well. The cell manufacturers work extremely closely with the production equipment suppliers and the material suppliers. So we largely talk to lead cell manufacturers, and this seems to be the case that they are very closely working together. And there also seems to be a lot of feedback from the downstream phases. So you learn a lot by using the cells about their performance across different applications, and about what kind of control algorithms you need to use, what kind of peripheral systems you need in terms of, say, for example, thermal management of the battery, depending on the application. So it's very application specific as well. So what does this mean for a policymaker when you're trying to promote innovation in these technologies? So if we try to place these technologies in a matrix, where on one axis you have the complexity of the technology itself, and on another axis where you have the complexity of the manufacturing process, the further away you are from the origin, the more there is a role for experimentation to improve the understanding of how the technology performs, and the more there is a role for learning by doing or learning by using, feeding back into R&D. So on one hand, you could place wind turbines high along this axis, where the product itself is complex and you need a lot of experimentation with the full product in the field to enable innovation. On the other hand, you could place solar PV more here, where the product itself is not complex, but the manufacturing processes are really complex. And you need a lot of experimentation with the full-scale production through pilot lines or commercial manufacturing of the technology. And our hypothesis is that lithium-ion batteries would be somewhere here, where there is a lot of experimentation, both with the production process and with the parameters of the cells themselves. So this has implications for policy. Basically, the more complex your product is, the more deployment policy has a greater role in terms of R&D policy, because it enables learning. You need geographic proximity to where the technologies are being used to get the feedback and to enable learning. And finally, there is a need to transfer tacit knowledge between different steps in the value chain to enable industry localization. So if you want different firms doing the different things that you need to produce wind turbines, you need them to collaborate closely and to effectively be able to transfer this knowledge through, for example, joint ventures. On the other hand, if you have complex manufacturing processes, you really need large markets to be able to deploy these production lines and to be able to learn from the production of these technologies. You need geographic proximity between the production equipment supplier and the OEM. So you still have home markets here, but not in the technology itself, but perhaps in the production equipment. And finally, knowledge transfer here we have seen takes place by the transfer of capital goods. We saw that in the case of China, where they were able to buy the production equipment from Europe and catch up very quickly in the manufacturing of solar cells. So that is it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd be happy to get your questions.